The unified Galactic Academy floated in the darkness between stars. It was a massive station, bigger than most cities, built from metal and glass and technologies that humans were still trying to understand. For 300 years, this place had trained the best soldiers from every corner of the galaxy. Species that had conquered their home world sent their finest warriors here. Only the strongest survived. Only the graduated. Stood at the window of his small room and watched the stars spin slowly past. He was 32 years old, born in a small town on Earth, and he still could not believe he was here. Humanity had joined the Galactic Union only 30 years ago. They were the species, the smallest, the weakest. When Earth's government announced they would send 3 candidates to the Academy, most alien species had laughed. What could humans possibly offer? They had no claws, no armor, no venom, no psychic powers. They were soft and slow and fragile. But here he was, Sergeant of the United Earth Defense Force, standing in a room that had housed warriors from 100 different worlds. A knock came at his door. He opened it to find his 2 teammates waiting in the corridor. Park was 28, tall for a human woman, with sharp eyes that never seemed to miss anything. She held a tablet computer in her hands, already studying the Academy's layout and rules. She had graduated top of her class in military strategy back on Earth. She thought 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Behind her stood the youngest of the 3 at 25. She was their medic, trained in trauma surgery and field medicine. She had a gentle face and a calm voice, but had seen her work under pressure. When blood was flowing and people were screaming, became the steadiest person in the room. "The orientation starts in 1 hour," said. "We should go early, see the room, understand the space." Nodded. This was why he liked working with. She always thought about positioning, about advantages, about details that others missed. They walked together through the station's corridors. The halls were built for species much larger than humans. The ceiling rose 4 meters above their heads. The doors were wide enough for creatures with wings or multiple limbs. Everything made the 3 humans feel small. Other candidates passed them as they walked. A group of marched by, their footsteps shaking the floor. They were massive beings over 2 meters tall, covered in black armor plates that grew from their own bodies. Their eyes glowed red in the dim light. They looked at the humans the way a wolf might look at rabbits, not with hatred but with a complete lack of interest. Prey was not worth noticing. A floated past them next, her body thin and graceful, her skin pale blue. Psychic tendrils drifted from her head like hair made of light. She glanced at the humans and felt something brush against his mind. A light touch, curious, then dismissive. She had scanned their thoughts and found nothing impressive. "They don't see us as competition," said quietly. "They don't see us at all," replied. "We're furniture to them, background noise." Said nothing, he just kept walking. The orientation hall was an amphitheater that could seat 1,000 beings. When the humans arrived, it was already half full. They found seats in the 3rd row, near the middle, good, multiple exits nearby, nothing blocking their view. These choices were automatic now, trained into them through years of military service. More candidates filed in over the next hour, counted 12 different species. They took up most of the front rows, their massive bodies requiring extra space. They clustered together in the upper sections, their telepathic whispers creating a constant mental hum that made his head ache slightly. Aquatics sat in special water-filled pods, their tentacles pressing against the glass. Hung from the ceiling, their compound eyes watching everything at once. 147 candidates in total. 3 of them were human. When Admiral entered, the room fell silent immediately. He was old, ancient by standards, and his armor plates had turned from black to deep gray with age. Scars crossed his body in dozens of places, each one a story of battle and survival. He moved slowly but with absolute authority. When he reached the podium at the center of the amphitheater, every eye was fixed on him. "Welcome to the Unified Galactic Academy," he said. His voice was deep, like stones grinding together. You are here because your worlds believe you are exceptional. Your governments believe you are the best of your species. Perhaps this is true. Perhaps it is not. That is what we will discover." He paused, letting his red eyes sweep across the assembly. "Tomorrow, your final examination begins. You will be placed in a simulated crisis scenario. Your objective is simple." He raised one massive claw. "Identify the greatest threat in the room. Neutralize it. Those who fail will be expelled from this academy and return to their home worlds in disgrace. Those who succeed will join the Galactic Defense Fleet as officers." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Candidates glanced at each other, already measuring, already calculating. "The simulation will last until the objective is complete or until you are eliminated. There are no other rules. You may form alliances. You may betray them. You may use any strategy you wish." His mandibles clicked together slowly. "We do not care how you succeed. We only care that you do." He turned and walked out without another word. The orientation was over. That night the station's social halls filled with candidates forming alliances. They gathered in groups, discussing which species they would target first. They linked their minds together, sharing information and strategy. The swarm buzzed with coordinated planning, their hive mind making them think as one. The humans sat alone in a small corner of the dining hall, eating simple food and talking quietly. "They are the obvious threat," said, keeping her voice low. "Everyone will target them first. They're the biggest, the strongest, the most aggressive." "They are more dangerous," disagreed. "They can read minds, influence thoughts. You might not even know they're attacking you until it's too late." Chewed his food slowly, thinking. What about they work as a swarm, kill 1 in 50 more take its place? "So what do we do?" asked. Pulled out her tablet and began drawing diagrams. "First, we need more information. We don't know what the simulation will look like. We don't know the terrain, the resources, the specific conditions. Planning without information is just guessing." "So we gather information," said. "We watch, we learn." "And we don't fight," added. "Not unless we have to. Every other species here is stronger than us, faster than us, better equipped for direct combat. If we try to beat them at their own game, we die." Nodded slowly. "So we play a different game." "Exactly." Looked at both of them. "We survive. That's our only goal, not winning, not glory, just staying alive long enough to figure out what's really happening." Across the dining hall, a young warrior with fresh black armor and eager red eyes noticed the three humans talking. He nudged his companions and pointed. "Look at the soft ones," he said, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "They're probably planning how to hide while real warriors fight." His friends laughed, a harsh sound like metal scraping metal. "Let them hide," one said. "They'll be eliminated within the first hour. Humans are prey, not predators. Everyone knows this." Nodded and turned back to his meal, dismissing the humans from his thoughts entirely. In their corner heard the laughter. He understood enough of the language to know what they were saying. He did not react. He did not let his expression change. He simply continued eating, continued planning, continued being invisible. Tomorrow, the examination would begin. 147 candidates would enter the simulation. Most would fail. Many would be humiliated. Some would learn lessons they would carry for the rest of their lives. In row 3, 3 humans finished their meal and returned to their quarters to rest. They did not train. They did not boast. They did not form alliances with other species. They simply prepared themselves mentally for whatever was coming. They had no claws, no armor, no venom, no psychic powers. They had something else, something that the other species had not learned to measure or fear. They had patience, and they had each other. The simulation chamber was massive. It had been designed to recreate any environment the Academy needed: forests, oceans, cities, space stations. Today it was configured as a diplomatic summit gone wrong. A grand conference hall stretched across 3 floors, filled with overturned tables, broken chairs, and scattered debris. Balconies overlooked the main floor. Corridors branched off in every direction. Hidden rooms waited behind locked doors. The lighting was dim, emergency red, creating shadows everywhere. Materialized in the simulation along with the other candidates. One moment he was standing in the preparation room, the next he was here, surrounded by chaos. His standard-issue sidearm hung at his hip. A small pack on his back contained basic supplies: water, food bars, a medical kit, communication device. Nothing special. Nothing that would give him an advantage over creatures with natural weapons. Around him, 146 other candidates appeared in flashes of light. They were scattered across the conference hall, some on the main floor, others on the balconies above. For a moment, everyone stood still, adjusting to the new environment, taking stock of their positions. Then the fighting began. A warrior named roared and charged at the nearest. His armored fists swung like hammers, crashing through a wooden table as the psychic being dodged away. Within seconds, 3 more joined him, their red eyes blazing with battle fury. They saw thee as the greatest threat, mind controllers who could turn allies into enemies with a single thought. They scattered, their pale blue bodies flowing through the shadows like smoke. They were not fighters in the physical sense. They preferred to attack from within, planting suggestions, creating fear, turning enemies against each other. But though were resistant to psychic attacks, their minds too simple and aggressive to manipulate easily. On the far side of the hall, the activated emergency systems that flooded a lower section with water. Their tentacles spread wide as they claimed their territory, creating a zone where they would have the advantage. Anyone who entered their domain would have to fight in an environment where there were masters. The swarm exploded outward, hundreds of bodies climbing walls and ceilings, spreading across the entire hall like a living carpet. They did not fight as individuals. They moved as one organism, surrounding targets, overwhelming defenses with sheer numbers. Watched all of this from behind an overturned table. Crouched beside him, her eyes moving constantly, tracking patterns, identifying threats. Was on his other side, her medical kit already open, ready for whatever came next. Northwest corner, whispered. Behind the collapsed pillar. Good cover, clear 2 exit routes. Nodded, move. They crossed the floor quickly but without running. Running attracted attention. Running looked like fear. They walked with purpose, staying low, using debris as cover. Other species barely glanced at them. The humans were small, unarmed except for basic sidearms, clearly not a priority target. Why waste energy on prey when predators were fighting nearby? They reached the corner and established a position. Took point, watching the main floor. Pulled out her tablet and began mapping the room, noting every exit, every structural weakness she could identify. Their supplies, and set up a small medical station behind the pillar. Minutes passed. The battle continued to rage across the hall. A fell, overwhelmed by a swarm of 2 were caught in the open and eliminated by these water cannons. A massive queen was crushed under a falling balcony, taking dozens of her swarm with her. The humans did nothing. They watched, they waited, they learned. The young who had laughed at them the night before noticed their position during a break in the fighting. He stomped over, his armor splattered with the blue blood of fallen. The soft ones hide while warriors fight, he said, his mandibles clicking with contempt. Typical prey behavior. You dishonor yourselves. Looked up at him calmly. We're not hiding, we're waiting. Waiting for what? For real soldiers to do your work. For the battle to end so you can crawl out safely. Laughed, a harsh grinding sound. Your species is weak. You should never have been allowed into this academy. Continued organizing medical supplies, not even looking at the massive warrior. We're waiting for you to exhaust yourselves. Paused, his red eyes narrowed. What? Look around, said, still focused on her tablet. You've been fighting for 20 minutes. How many have fallen? 8, 10. Your numbers are dropping, your energy is draining. Meanwhile, we haven't lost anyone, we haven't spent any resources. When you're all tired and wounded, who do you think will still be at full strength?" For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, not understanding, but the beginning of doubt. Then he shook his massive head and turned away. "Cowards survive by hiding," he growled. "Warriors survive by conquering. We will see which method the Academy values." He stomped back into the battle, his armor ringing against the floor. Watched him go, he almost understood. Almost agreed. But his training won't let him. Every instinct tells him that fighting is the answer. Aggression equals strength. Passivity equals weakness. His entire culture is built on that foundation. "And ours isn't?" asked. "Thought about that. Human history was full of wars, full of aggression, full of violence. But it was also full of something else: patience, cooperation, the ability to wait for the right moment. Humans had not conquered Earth by being the strongest predators. They had survived by being the most adaptable, the most willing to work together." 2 hours into the simulation, 63 candidates had been eliminated. They had taken the heaviest losses, their aggressive tactics making them easy targets for coordinated attacks. They had been reduced to a scattered handful, their psychic powers ineffective against enemies who expected them. The swarm had lost their queen and was falling into disorganized chaos. The humans were untouched. Other candidates had started to notice. An observer watched them from across the hall, its large eyes blinking slowly. A surviving sent a gentle psychic probe toward them, not an attack, just curiosity. Even some were glancing their way, confusion evident in their body language. How were the weak ones still alive? Noticed the attention and smiled slightly. "They're starting to wonder." "Good," said. "Let them wonder. Curiosity is better than contempt. Curious enemies might listen. Contemptuous enemies just attack." "You think we'll need allies?" asked. "I think this simulation is designed to change," replied. "The Academy wouldn't just throw us into a battle. There's something else coming. Something that will require more than individual strength." As if hearing his thoughts, the simulation changed. Alarms began to blare throughout the hall. Red lights flashed brighter, more urgent. A computerized voice announced, "Warning! Hull breach detected in Section 7. Atmospheric venting in progress. All personnel must respond immediately. This is not a drill." The fighting stopped. Candidates looked around in confusion. A hull breach in a diplomatic summit simulation. On the main floor, a section of wall began to glow, then cracked, then burst outward. Air rushed toward the breach, pulling debris and loose objects with it. The environmental systems were simulating a real emergency: atmosphere escaping into space, pressure dropping, death approaching for anyone who didn't act. They responded first, charging toward the breach, trying to seal it with their own bodies. But they were too aggressive, too uncoordinated. They got in each other's way, argued about tactics, wasted precious seconds. They tried to coordinate telepathically, but their numbers were too few, their network too damaged. Their messages went unanswered. The swarm scattered in panic, their hive mind broken, their instincts telling them to flee rather than fix. In the northwest corner stood up. "This is it," he said. "This is what we were waiting for." Nodded, already calculating. "The breach needs to be sealed. Manual override on the emergency systems. We need teams, not individuals. We need coordination." Grabbed her medical kit. "And people are going to get hurt trying to fix this. They'll need help." For the first time since the simulation began, the three humans moved toward the center of the chaos. Not to fight, not to dominate, but to help. They had no claws, no armor, no venom, no psychic powers. But they had something that every other species in that room had forgotten how to use. They had the ability to see beyond themselves, to think about the group, to sacrifice personal victory for collective survival. And in that moment, That made them the most valuable beings in the entire simulation. The air was screaming. That was the only way to describe it. A high-pitched howl as atmosphere rushed toward the breach, carrying dust and debris and anything not bolted down. Emergency lights painted everything in shades of red and shadow. Candidates stumbled and fought against the wind, their bodies struggling against the simulated decompression. Pushed forward, one arm raised to shield his face from flying debris. Beside him, shouted coordinates over the noise. Behind them, carried her medical kit close to her chest, protecting it from the chaos. A warrior stumbled past them, his massive body struggling against the wind. Blood leaked from a wound in his side where a piece of flying metal had struck him. He was trying to reach the breach, trying to help, but his strength was failing. "Stop," grabbed his arm, a ridiculous sight, a small human woman trying to hold back a creature 3 times her size. "You're injured. You'll die before you reach it." The turned his red eyes toward her, confusion and pain mixing on his alien face. "I must fight, I must." "You must sit down and let me stop the bleeding," said firmly. "Then you can fight." She pushed him toward a sheltered corner, and somehow he went. Perhaps it was shock. Perhaps it was the absolute certainty in her voice. Perhaps some part of him recognized that she was right. He sat down against a wall and went to work on his wound, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. Reached the main floor where the breach was venting atmosphere. A dozen were there, pushing against each other, shouting in their grinding language, each one trying to be the hero who sealed the breach alone. Their competition was killing them. "Stop!" His voice was not loud. He could not match the volume of warriors, but it was sharp, commanding, cutting through the chaos like a blade. "You're fighting each other instead of the problem." Turned toward him, recognition flickering in his eyes. "The human, what do you know about?" "I know that breach needs 3 things," interrupted. "Emergency sealant, manual pressure, and someone at the override console. You can't do all 3 by fighting over the same spot. You need to split up, work together." "We don't take orders from prey." "Then don't take orders, take information." Pointed at the breach, at the console on the far wall, at the emergency supplies scattered across the floor. "Sealant is there. Console is there. Pressure point is there. Figure it out or die. I don't care which." He turned away, leaving them to their choice. Across the hall had found the surviving. There were only 7 of them left, huddled together in a protected alcove, their psychic tendrils dim with exhaustion. "I need your help," said, approaching them without fear. The lead, an older female with deep blue skin, looked at her with tired eyes. "Why would we help you, human? You are not our ally. You are not our people." "Right now, we're all the same people," replied. "We're all people who will die if this breach isn't sealed. Your telepathy, can you coordinate groups without verbal communication? Send thoughts directly into minds?" "Yes, but—" "Then you're the most valuable beings in this room right now," gestured at the chaos around them. "Everyone is screaming. No one can hear each other. No one knows what others are doing. You can fix that. You can be the communication network that holds everything together." The exchange glances, their tendrils flickering with silent conversation. Then the leader nodded slowly. "What do you need us to do?" Smiled. "Link with as many minds as you can. When I give instructions, pass them along. Make everyone hear. Make everyone understand." The spread out, their tendrils extending, touching minds across the hall. Suddenly, his voice was not just in one place. It was everywhere, echoing in the thoughts of every candidate who was open to receive it. "Listen, the breach can be sealed, but only if we work together. Your strength is needed at the breach point. Hold pressure while sealant is applied. Your water pressure can help accelerate the sealant hardening. Your small bodies can reach the manual overrides in the walls. Everyone has a role. Everyone is needed." For a moment, nothing happened. The chaos continued, the wind still screamed, the situation still seemed hopeless. Then stepped back from the breach point. He looked at two other and nodded. Without words, they positioned themselves around the breach, ready to apply coordinated pressure instead of competitive force. A moved its pod closer, tentacles ready to assist. A group of scuttled toward the walls, their small bodies disappearing into maintenance shafts. It was not perfect. It was not smooth. There was still confusion, still arguments, still moments when old instincts flared and cooperation threatened to collapse. But it was happening. Species that had been fighting each other minutes ago were now working together. And at the center of it all, three humans moved without rest. Directed traffic, positioning teams, resolving conflicts, making decisions when no one else could agree. He did not give orders. He gave information, suggestions, options. He let others make the final choices while guiding them toward the right ones. Coordinated with the network, her tactical mind processing information from across the entire hall, identifying problems before they became disasters, adjusting plans in real time as situations changed. Moved through the wounded, treating injuries regardless of species. She bandaged a crushed limb with the same care she gave to a puncture wound. She spoke softly to frightened survivors, calming them with her steady presence. The warrior she had treated earlier, his name was, she had learned, followed her now, protecting her while she worked. He still did not understand why she had helped him. He was her enemy, her competitor. She had no reason to save him, but she had, and something in his warrior's code demanded that he repay that debt. Why, he asked, as she treated another wounded candidate, why help those who would hurt you? Looked up at him, her hands still working. Because that's what humans do. We help. It's how we survive. Helping enemies is weakness. No, she finished her work and moved to the next patient. Helping enemies is how you make allies, and allies are how you survive when you're not the strongest. Thought about this. In his culture, allies were made through dominance. You proved you were stronger and weaker warriors followed you. The idea of creating allies through service, through care, through making yourself useful, it was alien to him. Foreign, strange. But he was beginning to see its power. 18 minutes after the breach alarm sounded, the emergency was contained. The sealant held. The pressure was restored. The simulation's environmental systems returned to normal, the screaming wind falling silent. 70 candidates remained. They stood in the ruined conference hall looking at each other with new eyes. An hour ago they had been enemies competing for individual victory. Now they were something else. Not friends exactly. Not allies in any formal sense, but something had shifted. In the center of the group, three humans stood together. They were dirty, tired, their simple uniforms stained with blood and debris. They had no wounds. They had avoided direct combat entirely, but they looked exhausted. Approached them. His armor was scratched and dented, his body showing a dozen minor injuries. But his eyes were different now. The contempt was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. "You did not fight," he said. "No," agreed. "But you led somehow without strength, without dominance. You made others follow your direction." Shook her head. "We didn't make anyone do anything. We just showed them what needed to be done. They chose to do it themselves." His mandibles clicked slowly, a sound that was beginning to recognize as thinking, processing, trying to understand something new. "In my culture," said finally, "leadership comes from proving you are the strongest. The best warrior leads, the weak follow or die." "In ours," replied, "leadership comes from proving you can help the group survive. The best leader is the one who makes everyone stronger, not just themselves." That is, paused, searching for words. That is a strange way to think. Maybe, but we're all still alive, and we sealed the breach in record time. Looked around at the surviving candidates. Maybe strange isn't the same as wrong. Before could respond, the simulation changed again. New alarms blared, new warnings flashed. A computerized voice announced, "Alert! Hostile boarding party detected. Defense protocols activated. All personnel prepare for combat. Across the hall, panels slid open in the walls. Automated drones emerged, dozens of them, armed with non-lethal weapons, their sensors scanning for targets. The drones' targeting computers identified the greatest threats in the room. They locked onto the largest heat signatures, the most aggressive movement patterns, the beings their algorithms classified as most dangerous. They swept past the three humans without a second glance. "Watch them go," a small smile crossing her face. "They don't see us," she said. "No," agreed, "they don't." And for the first time since the simulation began, the humans moved to attack. High above the simulation floor, Admiral watched through walls that were transparent only from his side. The observation deck was filled with the Academy's senior instructors, one from each founding species of the Galactic Union. They had watched thousands of examinations over the centuries, seen millions of candidates succeed or fail. They thought they had seen everything. Today, they were learning otherwise. "Fascinating," murmured Instructor, the elder. Her psychic tendrils glowed softly as she observed the scene below. "The humans have completely restructured the group dynamic. Our candidates are following their lead without even realizing it." Admiral's red eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "The humans haven't eliminated a single opponent. By traditional metrics, they're failing the examination." "Are they?" His voice held a hint of amusement. "Look again, Admiral." On the simulation floor, chaos reigned. The automated drones had created a new crisis, their weapons firing stun rounds at any target they deemed a threat. Warriors were their primary focus, large, aggressive, armed with natural weapons. The drones' algorithms marked them as the highest priority targets. This meant they ignored the humans entirely. Moved through the battlefield like a ghost. The drone's sensors swept over him and saw nothing worth targeting. Small heat signature, minimal movement speed, no visible weapons drawn. He was background noise, furniture, irrelevant. He used this invisibility to approach a drone from behind. His hand found the maintenance panel on its back, a weakness he had identified while watching earlier, while other candidates were too busy fighting to observe. A quick series of commands entered on the panel's simple interface, and the drone shut down. One down, dozens to go. Across the room was doing something different. She had gathered a small group of wounded candidates, a with a damaged leg, two with crushed antennae, a suffering from psychic exhaustion. These beings could not fight. They were liabilities, targets, weak points. She turned them into assets. "The drones target movement and aggression," she explained, keeping her voice calm despite the weapon's fire around them. "If you stay still and stay calm, they'll pass you by, but you can still watch. You can still think. Tell me what you see." The wounded became observers. Their eyes tracked drone patterns, identified weaknesses, noticed details that fighters in the middle of combat could never see. Collected this information and passed it along, building a picture of the enemy's behavior that no individual fighter could have constructed alone. Worked with the network which had grown stronger since the breach crisis. The telepaths were no longer fighting the other species, they were serving them, passing information, coordinating responses. It was a new role for them, one that went against their instincts for manipulation and control. But it was working. Drone patterns suggest centralized control, transmitted through the network. Not individual AI, hive behavior. Find the controller and you disable them all. A scout found the control unit hidden behind a false wall. A team smashed through the wall to reach it. Used precise water pressure to short-circuit its systems. Working together, species that had been trying to kill each other hours ago achieved in minutes what none of them could have done alone. The drones fell silent, one by one, as their controller died. In the observation deck, Instructor, a massive elder whose armor had turned almost white with extreme age, spoke for the first time. "I have trained warriors for 300 years," he said, his voice like ancient stones grinding together. "I have never seen anything like this." "The humans have not won a single combat engagement," observed Instructor, whose tentacles twitched with analytical thought. "They have not demonstrated superior strength, speed, or tactical ability. By every measure we traditionally use to evaluate candidates, they are below average." "And yet," Admiral said slowly, "they are winning." He turned to face the assembled instructors, his red eyes thoughtful. "When we designed this examination, we expected candidates to identify threats and eliminate them. We expected competition, dominance, the strong rising above the weak. That is how every examination has played out for 300 years. Until now," said. "Until now." Turned back to the observation window. "The humans have not eliminated threats. They have transformed them. Enemies become allies. Competitors become cooperators. The species that were destroying each other are now working as a single unit, and at the center of it all." He pointed at the three small figures moving through the simulation floor. Three beings who, by every objective measure, should have been eliminated in the first hour. Below had gathered the remaining candidates for a strategy meeting. It was an absurd sight. A small human male standing before warriors twice his size, predators with claws and venom and psychic powers, speaking as if he had any right to lead them. But they listened, they all listened. "The simulation isn't over," was saying. "There will be more challenges, more crises. The Academy is testing us and they're not done yet." "How do you know?" asked. "Because the objective hasn't been achieved." Looked around at the assembled candidates. "We were told to identify the greatest threat and neutralize it. Has anyone done that? Has anyone pointed at something and said, 'That's the threat and I've defeated it'?" Silence. The candidates looked at each other, uncertainty in their eyes. "The thought they were the greatest threat," said. "The thought they were." Everyone had a different answer. Maybe that's the point. Maybe we've all been asking the wrong question. What question should we be asking? The speaker was the elder female who had first agreed to help with the telepathic network. Her name was, and she had begun to look at the humans with something like respect. Spoke up. Maybe the question isn't what is the greatest threat. Maybe it's what makes something a threat in the first place. Strength said immediately. Size, weapons, aggression. "Is that true?" asked. "You're one of the strongest beings here. You have natural armor, claws, size, power. Are you the greatest threat in this room?" Hesitated. An hour ago he would have said yes without thinking. Now he was not so sure. He had seen what the humans could do, not through strength but through something else. Something he still did not fully understand. "I don't know," he admitted. "That's the first step," said. "Admitting we don't know, that we might be wrong, that the answer might be different from what we expected." In the observation deck, Admiral made a decision. "End the simulation," he said. Instructor turned to him in surprise. "Sir, the candidates haven't completed the objective. They haven't identified the threat." "Haven't they?" His mandibles clicked slowly. "Look at them, really look. They're not fighting anymore. They're not competing. They're asking questions, sharing ideas, trying to understand. They're doing exactly what we hoped they would learn to do, working together despite their differences." But the examination protocol was designed to test individual combat ability and threat assessment. It was never designed for this. Gestured at the screen. "We have discovered something more valuable than any examination could measure. We have discovered what humans bring to the Galactic Union." He pressed a control on his console. Below, the simulation dissolved. The ruined conference hall faded away, replaced by the clean walls of the examination chamber. The candidates stood blinking in the sudden light, confused by the abrupt ending. A door opened at the far end of the chamber. Admiral walked through, his ancient body moving with deliberate purpose. Behind him came the other instructors, a procession of the galaxy's most powerful species. The candidates straightened instinctively, soldiers responding to the presence of command. Stopped at the center of the chamber, his red eyes sweeping across the assembly. "The examination is over," he announced. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Over, but they hadn't completed the objective. They hadn't identified the threat. They hadn't. "You were told to identify the greatest threat in the room and neutralize it," continued. "Most of you chose some chose a few chose each other." His gaze found the three humans standing in the crowd. "You all chose wrong." He began to walk toward them, his massive form pushing through the assembled candidates like a ship through water. "Sergeant Lieutenant Park, specialist." He stopped in front of the three humans, looking down at them from his tremendous height. "Step forward." Felt his heart pounding as he stepped out of the crowd, and at his sides. Every eye in the chamber was on them. Every species was watching. Admiral's voice carried to every corner of the room. "The greatest threat in any room is not the largest predator. It is not the strongest fighter. It is not the being with the most weapons or the most aggressive nature." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "The greatest threat is the one you underestimate, the one you dismiss, the one you believe you understand." He placed one massive claw on shoulder, a gesture of profound respect in culture. "And these three humans just taught every one of you how dangerous that underestimation can be." The silence in the examination chamber was complete. 41 candidates stood in formation, their eyes fixed on the three humans who had stepped forward from the crowd. Admiral's claw still rested on shoulder, a gesture that every species recognized as an honor of the highest order. His mind was racing. He had expected failure. He had expected to be sent home in disgrace, another example of humanity's inadequacy among the stars. He had not expected this, standing at the center of attention, being treated as something valuable. "Sir," he managed to say, his voice steady despite his confusion, "I don't understand. We didn't complete the objective. We didn't identify the threat." Admiral's mandibles clicked, that slow, grinding sound that now knew meant that was amused. "Didn't you?" He released shoulder and turned to address the entire assembly. "For 300 years, this academy has trained soldiers for the Galactic Defense Fleet. We have taken the strongest warriors from every species and taught them to fight, to lead, to win. Our graduates have defended the Union against threats from beyond known space, against pirates and criminals and enemies that would destroy everything we have built." His red eyes swept across the crowd. "But we have always struggled with one problem. Our species do not trust each other. We form alliances of convenience, not partnerships of genuine cooperation. When crises arise, we fight as individuals, not as a unified force. We compete when we should collaborate. We see difference as weakness rather than strength." He gestured toward the three humans. "Your species has been in the Galactic Union for only 30 standard years. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no psychic abilities, no evolutionary advantages that any of us would recognize as valuable in combat. By every measure we traditionally use to evaluate military potential, humans are below average." Felt stiffened beside him. These were not words of praise. These were the same dismissals they had heard 100 times before. But was not finished. "And yet," the Admiral continued, "in 6 hours, 3 humans accomplished something that has never happened in the history of this academy. They took a group of competing predators, species that were literally trying to kill each other, and transformed them into a cooperative unit. They solved crises that should have eliminated half of you. They turned enemies into allies through nothing but kindness, competence, and an absolute refusal to play the game everyone expected them to play." He turned to face the other instructors. "Instructor, in 300 years of training warriors, have you ever seen a follow the lead of a smaller, weaker species?" The ancient elder shook his massive head slowly. "Never." Instructor, have your students ever willingly served as a communication network for other species, subordinating their own interests for the good of the group? The instructor's tendrils flickered. Never. And yet both happened today. Not because the humans forced it, not because they dominated or manipulated or threatened. They simply showed a different way, and everyone else chose to follow. Turned back to the candidates. The examination was never about combat. It was never about who could defeat whom in a fight. It was about perception, the ability to see threats accurately and respond appropriately. And the truth is that most of you failed that test badly. You saw the obvious threats, the large predators, the psychic manipulators, the swarm species. You missed the real threat entirely. What was the real threat? Asked. His voice was humble now, genuinely curious rather than challenging. The real threat, said, was your own assumptions. Your belief that strength equals danger, that weakness equals safety, that the greatest threat must be the largest target. Those assumptions nearly killed all of you during the breach crisis. Those assumptions made you fight each other instead of working together. Those assumptions blinded you to the three beings who were quietly reorganizing the entire social structure of the examination while you were busy competing. He looked directly at Sergeant. Your species has a phrase for what you did today. I believe it translates roughly as the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. You refused to stick up. You refused to draw attention. You made yourselves invisible while everyone else competed for visibility. Why? Thought carefully before answering. Because we knew we couldn't win a direct competition, he said finally. We're smaller, weaker, slower. If we tried to beat everyone else at their own game, we would lose, so we played a different game. And what game was that? Survival, not winning, just surviving. And the best way to survive wasn't to fight. It was to make ourselves useful, to help others, to build relationships instead of tearing them down. Stepped forward. Sir, if I may, we weren't trying to lead anyone. We weren't trying to prove anything about humanity. We were just doing what came naturally to us, working together, helping others, thinking about the group instead of just ourselves. And that, Admiral said, is exactly what makes your species the most dangerous thing in this galaxy. The word dangerous hung in the air. Several candidates shifted uncomfortably. Dangerous? Asked. We're not dangerous, we're just. You're just the species that conquered your entire planet without natural weapons. You're just the species that built civilizations across continents while others were still fighting over hunting grounds. You're just the species that reached the stars in less than 1,000 years of technological development. His voice was rising now, not with anger but with something like awe. Every other species in the Galactic Union took tens of thousands of years to achieve spaceflight. Humans did it in centuries. Why? Because you don't compete with each other the way we do. You cooperate. You share knowledge instead of hoarding it. You build on each other's work instead of tearing it down. He spread his massive arms wide. Look at yourselves. Look at what you became today. An hour ago you were enemies. Now you are something else. A team, a unit, a group that can work together across species lines. Who did that? Not any of the species that have been in the Galactic Union for thousands of years. 3 humans did it in 6 hours simply by refusing to fight and choosing to help instead. Stepped forward from the crowd. The massive warrior who had been treated by, who had followed her through the battle, who had seen what human compassion could accomplish. Admiral, he said, his voice rough with emotion that rarely showed in public. I was taught that humans were prey, weak, irrelevant. I was wrong. This human, he gestured at, she saved my life. Not because she had to, not because I could help her. She saved me because that is what humans do. They help. He turned to face the other candidates. I have fought in 17 battles. I have killed enemies from 6 different species. I thought I understood warfare. I thought I understood strength. He shook his massive head. I understood nothing. True strength is not the ability to destroy. True strength is the ability to build, to heal, to bring together. and humans have that strength in measures we cannot comprehend. The other candidates were murmuring now, talking among themselves. They were sharing thoughts telepathically, processing, understanding. They were buzzing with rapid communication. Even they were waving their tentacles in patterns that indicated deep consideration. Admiral let the moment stretch, let them process, let them understand. Then he spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of 300 years of wisdom. The examination is complete. All 41 of you have passed. You will join the Galactic Defense Fleet as officers, serving together in integrated units. This is unprecedented. Normally, candidates are assigned to species-specific divisions, but today you prove that something greater is possible. He looked once more at the three humans. Sergeant Lieutenant Park, Specialist, you will receive special commendations for your performance. Your methods will be studied, analyzed, and taught to future generations of Academy students. What you accomplish today will change how we think about military leadership for centuries to come. Felt's hand find his, Felt's shoulder press against him. They had come to this place as outsiders, as prey, as furniture. They were leaving as examples. We weren't trying to change anything, said quietly. We were just trying to survive. Admiral's mandibles clicked one final time. Yes, Sergeant, that is precisely what makes your species the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. You don't fight to dominate. You fight to endure. And nothing in the known universe, is harder to kill than something that simply refuses to die. The 41 survivors looked at the three humans with new eyes. Row 3 had been invisible to them for the entire program. Now they understood why that should have terrified them from the beginning. Humans were not the greatest threat because of their strength. They were the greatest threat because of their heart. And the galaxy would never underestimate them again.